All right, then let's begin with a word of prayer. Father, you sent your Son to bring us light, to bring us truth, to show us the way. For this we are truly grateful. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Don't worry about the Corinthians. I'll take care of that.
Mark as usual.
Okay.
Yeah, I got Matthew.
Okay.
I'll be Lukey.
Bingo. And I'm John, I know.
John, how many verses that is?
Oh, that's a slew. 18 verses.
I might
19.
not have to do all that.
It's only in pieces. Don't worry about it. Now, before we begin, you really have to get this in your mind.
Okay.
At the tomb, when Jesus was placed in the tomb, there were two Marys that we have to be aware of. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of. Okay? Mary Magdalene left before the rock was put into place. The other Mary saw the rock put in place. Then they both went to different places. Okay? You've got to keep that in mind as we go through this. Okay? There we go. It's 6 a.m. Sunday, April 9th, 30 AD. John 1:20, 1a, and I'll take it because it's an A, and you never know where to. If you want to try it, that's okay. It goes, now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came early to the tomb while it was still dark. Okay. Anything does that tell you anything?
Well, she was there early.
Real early.
Yeah.
Okay. It says it was while it was still dark. Now she's 20 minutes away. So she had to walk all that way in the dark. Why was she coming? Do you remember?
To prepare the body.
To prepare the body. So she's got a basket full or some container full of materials for this purpose. Okay? So here she comes, at least one, her, and probably with somebody else. But it's in the dark. Okay?
So it's probably before 6 a.m. because...
Correct. It is before 6 a.m. because that's sunrise, approximately. Okay? Is it the third day yet?
Well...
When does day begin?
At sundown.
At sunset, sunrise, the day begins.
Well,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He was buried on Friday.
Friday,
Saturday,
during the light.
And now
Then,
it's Sunday.
Now it's Sunday
That's 3 days.
morning. On the third day, he will be raised on the third day. Okay? Remember, please, there's confusion that's going to happen here. Okay? Not everybody's going to get the same story the same way. So I want you to be careful with how we're reading this. Okay? Here we go. Luke 24, verse 1.
But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they went to the tomb, taking the spices which they had prepared.
Okay, so Luke says it's happening when?
At early dawn.
Early dawn. That's not dark now. That's early dawn, whenever that is. Okay, so there's more light for Luke's perspective.
Generally, you would consider that before sunrise, but just starting to lighten the
During
sky.
first light.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay, that's when you can go fishing too, by the way. Okay, and what were they bringing?
Well, and also it's they.
They.
Not just Mary Magdalene, but it's at least two
At
people.
least two people.
And they're bringing the spices.
And they're bringing the spices for preparing. Good. So we're taking these steps slowly. Let's find one more shot at this. Mark 16, 2 and 3.
And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. And they were saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?"
Okay. Now what do we see?
Now it says,
The sun is already up.
sun was out.
Okay. And this we know this is Mary Magdalene and her crew person. because they're bringing the spices to prepare the body, because they didn't know there was a stone in the way, and that Nicodemus had already prepared the body. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. Okay, so we have some thoughts that might be slightly different, so we're not sure about timing on this. Okay, do you have any thoughts or questions you'd like to ask?
Well, the thing that I see is all three of these writers are using the Q source, so it does seem a little unusual that you would have one disagreeing with the other two on. Now, granted, maybe the time doesn't really matter, but
Okay, well, actually it does. That's why I'm pressing the issue. And John doesn't use Q, by the way. Okay, Matthew, Mark, and Luke all use Q.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Matthew and Luke use Q. Okay, so all we have now is we have some thoughts that it's in the morning sometime, around morning time. Okay? Early, it's early. Okay, here we go. On Sunday morning, the first day of the week. See, I'll say that right up front. They all say that. And the third day, Hosea and 1 Corinthians are both significant here, since Jesus was buried on the third day. Around first light, around 5 a.m., depending, Mary Magdalene and another woman, probably Salome, staying in Bethany, collected the spices and other things they would need to do their duty preparing the body of Jesus. So about first light, they're collecting stuff out in Bethany, okay? And Bethany is east. It's over the hill. It's over the Mount of Olives. So they're still going to have to walk through Jerusalem to the tomb. Here we go. Any question or thought? At sunrise, around 6 a.m., it will have been, notice that's future tense, about 36 hours since Jesus had been laid in the tomb. About, because we don't know exactly when he was laid in the tomb. In the beginning of the third day, Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday morning. So once sunrise occurs, you will have the third day.
And actually, you'd probably say Friday afternoon, it'd be late.
That's true.
Late afternoon.
Late afternoon. Okay, good. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James the Younger and Joseph, who had seen the body of Jesus taken from the tomb, had agreed on Friday. What?
We're still prior, into the tomb.
To the tomb.
Just you in
Taken into, you're right. No, taken into the tomb.
Okay, but you accidentally said from.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
my apologies. Had agreed on Friday before Mary Magdalene left to go to Bethany to meet at the western gate at sunrise. Mary Magdalene was not aware of any problem with access to the body, since she had left before the stone was rolled into place. Okay. Here is approximately where Mary, the mother of James and such, was staying. Over here on the east side of this was Bethany, and that's where Mary Magdalene and Salome were staying. They'll come either this way or over the hill, down through Jerusalem, not to the temple. They will go around the temple. They will go through Jerusalem here to get to the site up here. Meanwhile, they are coming up this way. They have it from two different angles. Okay? They've agreed to meet here, near the western gate. That makes sense. Okay? Any question or thought? It would take Mary Magdalene and her companion less than 20 minutes to walk to Jerusalem, through the city, and to the gate just north of the three towers of Herod's palace. Herod's palace is here, and here are the three towers. So they're going to be coming up into this general area up here. Matthew 28:1.
After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb.
Ah, now, what does this tell you? Is there anything different or stated differently or thought differently?
Well, different words to explain it was early.
Okay, good.
And, but we have identified now two people by name.
Correct. Two Marys.
Mhm.
And nothing is said about bringing spices. in this
Thank
one.
you. This is Mary, the mother of James and Joseph. They're coming to look at the grave. They're not coming to prepare spices. This is that other group. They've taken the two stories and pushed them together. Okay? So this is the other Mary's story, not Mary Magdalene. This is the Mary, the mother of.
Even though Mary Magdalene is
They're going to keep
given,
They're going to keep putting her name in things, and they're going to get all confused because the different writers were confused. Yeah. Too many Marys. You know, and they were living in the house of Mary, the mother of Mark. I mean, there's just too many of them. So it confused the writers even then, in my opinion. So this Mary here is coming to look at the grave because she knows the stone is in the way. Okay? Mark 16:1.
when the Sabbath was passed, just a second, decided to do.
Okay?
When the Sabbath was passed, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, brought spices so that they might go and anoint him.
Okay, what does this tell us?
Since they brought spices.
Okay? Come on,
There's-
careful how you read it now.
There's Mary Magdalene.
Yes?
There's the Mary,
Mary, the
mother of James and Salome.
Is,
Unless she's the mother of Salome.
well, that's what I wanted you to look at. I don't think that's the case. Salome is another woman. That's her companion. Okay? So now we have the third woman. The woman who comes with Mary Magdalene is Salome. But they're not Mary, the mother of James. They're two different groups.
You also have an explanation what they're going to do with the spices.
Correct. They're finally going to say they're going to anoint the body. To anoint it, you need what? At the very least, you need oil. Okay? There were other spices that are used for wrapping the body, but at least you want to use this particular oil mixture or oil to anoint the body. Okay, very good. Anything else?
What was the object of anointing the body?
I never asked that question.
Oh,
Very good. I'll have to think about that.
okay.
They do it all the time.
Yeah, and I just wonder what that means.
Maybe it's just to cover the odor for a while,
Well,
or
we-
That's
maybe it has a
right.
relation, since it's anointing, that might be a thing from God saying anoint them. It's a way of making them, I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
But the spices themselves, we know those were aromatic, so that would have been
Right.
for the odor.
Right, so I don't know. We'll find out maybe sometime in the future. Meanwhile, Mary, the mother of James the Younger and Joseph, different titles, okay, who watched Joseph and Nicodemus roll the door stone into place, and who had then returned to Jerusalem to the house of Mary, the mother of Mark, knew that they could not get the stone rolled away from the doorway.
Why?
They're women.
It's heavy.
It's rock.
Oh,
It's
okay.
kind of hard, not meant to be moved easily like knock, knock, open sesame. It doesn't work that
Well,
way.
it was no doubt intended to be difficult to move.
Yes, otherwise the grave robbers would have taken it out that same evening. You know, that's not a question. But we're going to get into the size of it a little later.
It
I
only
know it
took-
sounds funny, but it's coming.
It only took 2 men, though, to roll the stone.
We don't know that.
Oh,
Well, and
It
it's not
took
as,
2 men were in charge of it, but they also had other people
Okay.
helping
and
them.
it's not as difficult to roll it into place because it's
It's
slightly
downhill.
downhill. The
Oh,
grooves,
okay.
but rolling it back up that groove uphill.
Oh, okay.
Slightly, even a slight incline when it's something heavy is hard.
Yeah,
Well, we
yeah.
couldn't budget.
Okay, good. Anything else? Since they had not been able to get a message to Mary Magdalene and Bethany during the Sabbath, obviously, texting is not allowed, they call that work, they planned to simply pay their respects outside the tomb. Big rock in the way, they're just going to go to look at the tomb and pay respects. Okay? They left in plenty of time to arrive at the west gate by sunrise. Any question here? Is this seeming reasonable?
Sure.
Okay? During first light, around 5:30 a.m., the two groups of women met at the west gate. Then, the west gate, right under the three towers, right there. Golgotha is over here. Then Mary, the mother of James the younger and Joseph, and the women from Jerusalem informed Mary Magdalene and the women from Bethany that after they had left on Friday, a very large stone had been rolled into place in front of the doorway to the tomb, and that they had no idea how they could move it. They all agreed to continue to the tomb anyway. So now Mary Magdalene, with the spices and the oil, know that they're not going to get access to the body. But that's okay. We'll go pay respects. Any question or thought? Comment?
No, other than, my question would be why they needed to be there so early, because that would impose hardships.
Yes. I would suspect the reason they want there to be early is to avoid crowds and to avoid the new change of guard for the Romans, who would be more alert, and the temple guard. People would still be asleep. And so I think there would be less chance of being observed.
And just,
And I-
obviously, it's as early as they could possibly get there
It's true.
to take care of Jesus.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's right, very true. So there, I think those, and besides, I'm a morning person, so I'd rather get up and do it early and get my chores done. Well, some are, and some aren't. You'd be late. Okay. Here we go. All right, here we go. Matthew 28, 2 through 4.
And suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For the fear of him the guards shook and became like dead men.
Okay, what does this tell us, and what does it not tell us?
It does not tell us that the women were there yet.
That's correct. It doesn't say that the women were there.
So
It doesn't actually even tell us the time.
No, and the guards must have told somebody, well, when they went in and...
We'll deal with that. But what does this tell us or not tell us? That's what I'm after. And you're right. The women were not present, apparently.
Just the guard.
There was an earthquake, and an angel came,
Mm-hmm.
rolled it away.
Mm-hmm.
The guards
Right.
were shocked, like, whoa, what happened?
See, one angel is real strong, and they can push them uphill, these rolling stones. Yeah. Okay?
Just go, and it's done.
Ugh. Yeah. And they have to flap their wings a lot, too. So sorry. I apologize, sort of.
You've done.
I don't. Notice his appearance.
Well, yeah, you find different appearances, but his appearance was like lightning, which to me would be a lot different from someone who was wearing really white clothes.
Agreed. There would seem to be a radiance of light at the very least.
Like that Shekinah glory.
I'm not going to go that far,
But
but
the
there'll
glory
be.
of God.
But there's something, there's something else brightening this person. Okay, this angel. Okay. White, and his clothing became, or was as white as snow. And did not mean the stuff by the roadside. Okay, that's called snert. Okay, this is white as snow, and every one of us has seen white snow. Okay, it's
Well,
white.
we do know in those days they did not have the mechanism to make things pure white either.
That's right.
So clothing that was white as snow would be unnatural appearance.
It would be, it would really brighten the eyeball. Even in the morning, somebody would be awake. Or be awakened. Okay.
Would they even have snow in that part of the
Oh yes, they have snow in Jerusalem
Well,
periodically.
they knew what snow was, that's why the reference.
The guard shook for fear of him. Why would they be afraid of a dude in white clothing?
Shining brightly.
Shining brightly and
Because they're
and a-
human.
and a quake that rolls the stone. Yeah, this is, they became,
Can you imagine us?
yes. So, and it says they became like dead men. What would a dead man look
They
like?
probably fainted.
It probably became unconscious. Good. So does it tell us anything else?
Well, at least mute and afraid to do anything.
Yeah, but then if they're mute and afraid to do anything, when others show up, they would probably awaken and respond. Whereas if they're unconscious, they would not be aware of these other persons. I don't know. It's curious. You're right. Here we go. Matthew 27, 52 to 53. Now this is a big change. It's a jump into a different subject. But go ahead, let's see if we can find it. It was mentioned earlier, now it comes to fruit.
52 and 53.
52 and 53.
The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many.
I thought this is the best place to put that particular verses. What does this tell you now?
Well, clearly there's a lot of supernatural stuff going on that they did not understand or
Okay.
couldn't understand.
Okay, regardless of if it's supernatural or not, what is it telling you happened?
Well, dead people appeared alive.
Dead people came back to life, came out of their tombs and walked into the city. Oh, it must have been the zombie apocalypse or something. I don't know. I don't really watch that stuff. Okay? What is it? Come on, something's being missed here.
Well,
Go ahead.
to me, it just now is like a foretaste of the resurrection of the dead when Christ returns.
Very
later.
good. Excellent.
Maybe a little. I mean, and also, I mean, it's just the power of God is there in some amazing amounts. But I think it is a precursor.
And don't we have sort of a creed that says when he died and was buried, he descended to the dead or into hell, whichever you want to go in? See, maybe these are some of those who followed him out. Okay? But I am asking you to look at one particular set of words here. Who came out of their tombs?
Bodies
Well,
of the saints.
yeah.
The saints. What saints were there prior to his resurrection?
We just call them saved sinners.
Well, so probably you would
This is
expect that these were people who were well known who had died, who were considered to be good people.
Good people. Good Jewish righteous people.
Yeah.
Godly, probably men.
And yet the saints becomes a technical term, meaning those who had followed Jesus, who were believers in the Christ and were followers, and they were saints, saved sinners. But that's a technical term later in the church. Remember, this is written 30 years later. So the phrase, the saints came out, may not be the correct phrase. But somebody came out, and it was probably those who had been in hell, or they were visited by Christ, and came out with him. Jewish righteous people. That's a guess. Okay? Because the use of the word saints is a problem. Any other thoughts? before 6 a.m., key is that 6 a.m. thing, there was another earthquake or aftershock. The earthquake moved the stone door enough to allow entry, and a figure of a man appeared sitting on top of the stone door, dressed in a robe as bright as the morning sun. Okay, any question or thought with that? Okay. This is the tourist garden tomb. And here it is, the Roman soldiers. There were only a couple of them. That would all be detailed. Looking at a man sitting on the stone. Okay? Any question? No. Good. Here we go. The Roman guard passed out at the site. That's my opinion. It became as dead men, unconscious. Other tombs were also opened and bodies came out, and the revised persons, saints, went into Jerusalem. Okay? And that will happen. There's no appearance involved here, but something happened at this time. At this time. Starting just before the sun rises. Or just as the sun is rising. Okay. The sun comes out, you've got a guy sitting on a tombstone, sitting up there like that. It's really white clothing. Maybe the sunlight shoots a little beam at him and poof, he gets really bright. I don't know. All I know is he's bright and they're unconscious, and it's now going to be 6 a.m. Okay? And Jesus has risen from the tomb. Luke 24:2.
And they found the stone rolled away from the tomb.
Okay, that's it. See, it was hard. I mean, I know I got the really tough ones here. So, the women approach and they see what?
The open tomb.
The stone is rolled away enough that we have entrance. They hadn't expected that. That was totally unexpected. Mark 16:4.
And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled back. It was very large.
There. See, I told you we'd get to the size of this stone eventually. It's told, Mark tells us it was an extremely large stone. Probably maybe a little unusually large. We'll call it that. Okay? When the women arrived at the tomb, they saw some Roman soldiers lying on the ground, seemingly to be unconscious. The women would see them, but they would not be aware of the women. Otherwise they would have gotten themselves conscious, gotten themselves active. But they also saw that the stone door had been moved, and that there was now an opening in the doorway to the tomb. Question, thought, or comment?
Also, we do know that a lot of times Roman soldiers, if they were suspected of misbehaving, were killed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we don't know what these guys, their fear may very well be that they would be punished for something they failed to prevent.
Oh, when they become aware of it, they will be guaranteed to be concerned about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They don't just get fired the way they do these days or put on trial. Mark 16:6.
Okay, do you want me to do the verse 5?
Nope.
Okay. And he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him."
Okay. This is the angel that's on the rock, sitting on there, okay? And I'll say a man in bright white clothes. He says to them, what? What is it that's important that he says here, so we know where he is located? That's how we know which person this is.
Oh, the fact that he was sitting on the rock?
The fact that it says, here is the place. That means he's outside guiding them inward. So this is identified then as the man in white still sitting on the doorway. Probably. But some male person in white is pointing them to the tomb and saying,
He is not here.
He's not here. He is risen. Okay? Anything else strike you? A man with bright clothes, sitting on the stone door, in the light of the risen sun, said, You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He is not here. He has been raised. Come and see where he was laid. So here's an invitation for them to come into the tomb, to look into the tomb, to go into the tomb. Anything? Any questions? Luke 24:3.
But when they went in, they did not find the body.
There we go. What does this tell you?
He's gone.
He was risen.
Good. I'm glad for both of those. What else does it tell you?
They went in.
That it says they went in. These are women. How many of them went in? All of them? Some of them? Who knows? Somehow, somebody goes in to the point where they're able to look and see that the body is gone. Okay? Because there's conflicts here as to what they did. So hang in there.
Well, and presumably, you wouldn't have to go very far to see that the body was
You would
gone.
not have to go very far, especially if the sunlight is going into the doorway, which would put it on the door would be on the east side of the hill, so the sunlight would be coming at it. Do you understand how that is? So you put the doorway here, and the sun is coming this way from east to west. That puts the grave against the hill over here. Okay, here we go. Mark 16:5.
And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed.
Okay, what does this tell you?
Well, something unexpected.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. What does it tell you? What happened?
Well, okay, so
Good.
a young man that describes what his appearance was,
Yes,
and sitting at the right, that tells you where he was sitting,
correct.
wearing a white robe, but this is in the tomb.
Correct. So you have the one person in white outside the tomb saying, come on in. Then they stick their heads in there and look to the right side, and there across the table on the right side is another guy in white.
Mhm.
Right? Isn't that the way it's being perceived?
Mhm.
That's what it said.
Okay? So it sounds like there are two of them. Okay? And they were amazed. Any questions? I'm trying to take this very slowly here. All right, here we go. Matthew 28, 5 through 6.
But the angel said to the women, Do not be afraid. I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised. As he said, come and see the place where he lay.
So, the one who is inside is inviting them into the tomb now. Okay? It seems, doesn't it? And he's an angel. A man dressed in white. Okay?
Now in Mark, he doesn't have them outside. He only has the
That's right.
person inside.
That's right. And Matthew has other issues altogether. In fact, the women leave completely.
But they very clearly, in Matthew, very clearly said that this man was an angel, not,
Yes,
not
absolutely.
not just a bright, shiny thing.
What is an angel?
Servant of
Messenger.
A
heaven.
messenger of God.
Mhm.
Okay? And that can come in many forms. Okay? So, here you have a man in bright white is an angel. In the Middle Ages, they all had to have wings or that circle around their head that said they were holy people. Those were not likely to be there. Those were like tradition. Okay? But you never know. I don't know.
I think
Go ahead.
I've often thought that it's possible, probable that these supernatural beings had a light aura,
Good.
and that putting the halo on there was kind of a representation
Yes.
of, I don't know what this was, but he had light,
Okay.
Yeah, how do you represent that in paint? Yeah.
Yeah, and you do that, and it became a symbol that says this is a holy person, whether they were said to have a light around their head or not. Mary, the mother of Jesus, when it was first encountered, did not have that around, but every time in medieval art, she has that little halo effect to indicate that this is a holy person. Okay, so let's be cautious with artwork. Okay, what we have is an angel, a young man in white, saying, "He's not here. Come and look closer." Mary Magdalene and the women from Bethany, with more courage than Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, looked inside. Now be careful, I'll explain why I say that later, so hang with me on that. Inside they saw another man with bright clothes sitting on the right side of the rock shelf where Jesus' body had been laid. As they went into the tombs, they would have a shelf where the body would be laid and could be prepped and left on that body until it deteriorated. Okay? The women lowered their heads. "Why do you look for the living here among the dead?" the angel asked. Remember how he told you this would happen. Okay? Any thoughts or questions?
Well, clearly for everyone, no one expected Jesus' words to be a literal.
Interpreted in that way, correct. But this is a very literal fact. This is what's happened. Okay? According to the writers, yes.
And it's not just the body's been moved, but it's living.
Yes.
He is living.
And these are messengers from God. These are angels. This is God affirming that he has raised his son from the dead. Therefore, what he had said during his lifetime in his ministry, you really ought to pay close attention to it. He was, in fact, the Son of God. Here we go. Luke 24, 4 through 8.
While they were perplexed about this, behold, two men stood by them in dazzling apparel. And as they were frightened and bowed their heads to the ground, the men said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified and on the third day rise." And they remembered his words.
Okay, thank you. What do you have happening?
Well, there are the two men.
Okay. So the man on the outside has come in. So you have two men in white inside the tomb. Correct? That's what it seems to say, isn't it?
Seems to
Good.
say that.
And they said the same thing that everybody's been saying. He isn't here, he's risen. Any questions?
Well, just that, to me, it sounds a lot like Jesus' ministry, that you would have the first people to know these things be the women who no one would believe.
Yeah, isn't that curious? Who believes? Women just talk all the
Yeah.
time. Who can really care? They
Yeah.
just chatter. Who knows? They don't think,
Yeah.
They just be emotional.
But it goes right back to the Jesus, the first will be last,
Yeah. Women are the first here.
or the last will be first, yeah.
But then the men never pay attention to women. Come on, let's get reasonable. Okay, here we go. Matthew 28, 7a reads, "Go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead. And behold, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you." Now, this is important. This is how I know it was only Mary Magdalene and the Bethany women that looked into the tomb and were told this by the two. because they said, go to Galilee. And you'll find out, you'll find this important as we move along. Okay, don't worry about it. Okay, just be aware that Mary Magdalene and her group knew about this thing about Galilee. But the other Mary and her group did not. Therefore, they did not go into the tomb and hear these two say it. Okay? Any question or thought yet? I'll try to explain it more in detail here. Here we go. Mark 16:7.
But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you.
Now, is there anything unusual about this?
Well, adding Peter,
Differentiating.
Differentiating.
Yeah.
This is 30 years later when Peter has become a very important person among the newly forming following, the church. We'll call it the church. Okay? Don't forget, he is a disciple, but we're going to set him aside anyway.
Especially Peter.
Especially Peter. So good. Okay, and again, in Galilee, go to Galilee. Now here we go. Then the two angels told Mary Magdalene to go and tell the disciples that Jesus had been raised and will meet them in Galilee. Okay, there are the two and Mary in the tomb. Notice there's not a whole crowd of women in there. That's, I believe, correct. There could have been at least two. Salome may have been there also with her. But it takes a lot of courage, I would think, to actually go into the tomb.
Well, they had planned to go in,
Yes.
but not when there are angels.
Angels around.
Right.
And, yeah. So I think they were more prepared in their minds to go in, and they were invited in. But the other Mary held back, I think. And I'll explain why in just a few moments. Mary Magdalene and the women from Bethany left the doorway to the tomb and briefly told the others, this is after they looked in and were told about going to Galilee, that the body was gone and that the angel had told them that the Messiah had risen, but neglected to mention that they were to go to Galilee. I'll explain that, relax. Then around 6:15 a.m., they all left the garden. Mary Magdalene and the Bethany group hurried back to Bethany to tell the disciples that were there, while Mary, the mother of James the Younger and Joseph, and the Jerusalem returned to the home of Mary, the mother of Mark. Two groups came, two groups left. One group, Mary Magdalene, had one bit of information. What is it?
About the Galilee.
Galilee. Mary, the other Mary, did not have that information, and that's critical. Okay? That's very important. I know you don't realize that because the church never mentions that when we deal with this stuff. But now we're going to hear the rest of the story here. Any question or thought here? Mark 16:8.
And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid.
Which group would say nothing to anyone?
Mary Magdalene and whoever was with her.
Nope. Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, will say nothing. Mary Magdalene will go back and tell Peter and the group of disciples that are there.
so these were the ones you're saying that did not hear
They
the
didn't
instruction.
hear correct. That's why you'll see, in a moment you'll see why that's important. But they didn't receive the direction to go to Galilee. They left going, I ain't going to say nothing to nobody. Mary Magdalene's headed back to tell the disciples. We have two groups, very different attitudes. Question? I'm just looking at your face.
Yeah, I know. So I thought the disciples were in Jerusalem.
Not all of them at the same place. There are different ones in different locations, apparently. Here we
Because they
go.
were all meeting when,
That's later.
I know. rest
That will
of
be
story.
that evening. But right now, they're in different places. Okay? So here we go. Matthew 28, 9 and 10.
Suddenly Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came to him, took a hold of his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers, go to Galilee. There they will see me."
Okay, this is Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and her Jerusalem group. They are actually get a revelation, they are an appearance by Christ right there to them. This is one you don't hear of very often. Why? To tell them to go to Galilee. To tell the disciples there to go to Galilee. Because they hadn't mentioned it. They didn't know. And they were afraid to mention it anyway. My opinions, some of this, okay? But we know, look what happened. She grabbed his feet. Whoa, that's not what we hear. That's not what we get when in church. So let's hear it written out. By 6:15 a.m., Mary, the mother of James the younger and Joseph, and the Jerusalem women were hurrying home when Jesus appeared to them in person. These are the first ones he's appeared to, the very first. He knew that Mary Magdalene had not mentioned the angel's instructions to go to Galilee, and that they were so frightened they did not intend to say anything to anyone. Now does that make sense? This is the first appearance of the Lord. Not the one you're used to. Okay? Any question or thought? Comment? It's hard taking these apart, by the way. Here we go then. Jesus greeted them. They recognized him immediately. He was just as they remembered, and Mary grasped the feet of Jesus. Now that's not the story you're familiar with, is it? This is Mary, the mother of, and Jesus is exactly what she remembered. And she felt his feet and grabbed his feet and worshipped him. This is a very different thing than what we're used to being told. This is the first appearance. Go ahead.
Well, I just was going to say a little bit about, women in African culture, even today. They would remain lower than the men in all circumstance.
Yes.
And to grab his feet would be the logical approach.
Correct. That makes sense. And that's where they're reflecting this tradition, precisely.
Yeah.
Okay? But remember, what you're used to is, don't touch me. Remember? That's what you're always told. Here, it's not that he's not unrecognizable, he doesn't look like a gardener. He is Jesus. They remember him. He's exactly what they remembered, and they could touch him. This is very different, folks.
It's only been a weekend.
Yeah. Jesus instructed them to tell the disciples in Jerusalem to go to Galilee, and that he would meet them there. But when the women were alone again, the doubt returned, and they decided to tell no one when they arrived back at the house. No one would believe us anyway. And the disciples in Jerusalem did not receive the instructions to leave the city. Not all 11 disciples appeared in Galilee, by the way. There are only a certain number that appear over there. The rest of them were in Jerusalem and weren't told to go. Okay? Any questions? Thoughts? Why is it that this Mary looked at him and knew immediately it was Jesus? He is exactly what she remembered, and she could touch him. Why? Why is that so different from Mary Magdalene's experience? I want you to be thinking about that as we go along. Mark 16, 9 through 11.
Now when he rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. She went and told those who had been with him, as they mourned and wept. But when they heard that he was alive and had seen by her, they would not believe it.
Okay. Remember, Mark now is reflecting one specific tradition. He's ignoring Mary, the mother of. He's got the Mary Magdalene tradition in his mind.
And yet this is a very different account of meeting Mary Magdalene than what we
Right.
have in other.
This is kind of a summary thing that was written, okay? We're going to get into the details now. Matthew 28:8.
So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples.
Okay, this is Mary Magdalene and her group. What does it say? What does it say? What does it tell you? What's she doing? Why is she doing it?
Well, obviously she was told to do it,
Do what?
to go report to the
Right.
disciples.
Uh-huh.
And when she left quickly with
Quickly,
fear and great joy,
of course.
how could you not have both?
Yeah. Well, it's very easy, by the way, to not have both. But I want you to notice that this is what Matthew wrote. Okay? That they quickly, and this is the last, she left before any of this other stuff happened. She quickly, with her leaves, in awe at the very least, and with great joy.
Couldn't wait to tell them.
Yeah.
So they believed it. I mean,
No, they won't.
I
And
mean-
she, once we get there,
Yeah.
she's not full of joy anymore.
Yeah, but at that point,
At this moment,
Yeah,
she's excited,
yeah.
okay? Or the writer put it in there and shouldn't have. But everybody has them running away, ah, yay, the artists, okay? No, not fear and joy don't usually go together that well, okay? Joyful can be also just, I am happy, I am pleased, I am satisfied, something along that nature, you know? It doesn't have to be a jump and let's sing around and dance.
Well, and no doubt they're also still afraid of the rulers of the temple and
Yes.
afraid of the Romans.
And they're in awe of what has happened.
Yeah.
This is a miracle, folks. This is a miracle.
I can imagine walking along and just having
Yes.
the emotions just twirling and swirling, and I can't believe this has happened. Oh my gosh. Whoa, what was this? But he's alive.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you.
Galilee, yeah.
That's exactly right.
you're
So it's a confusing moment, let's call it that, okay? Okay, let's go on. Luke 24:10 and 11.
And returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest.
Oops, did I write that wrong?
even,
Luke 24:10 and 11?
Oh, 10.
Oh, good.
Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary the mother of James and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them.
Excellent, thank you. Now they've mixed it. Now they've got all the women going to the same place, it would seem. But you have Mary the mother and Mary Magdalene going to different places for the same purpose. Okay? But Mary the mother of was unsuccessful in telling them. They didn't tell them. But Mary Magdalene did. And the response was, "You're crazy, women." Yeah, joy. Go ahead and be joyful with that. Once that happens, it kind of takes the joy out of it. Okay? They wouldn't believe them. Women and their emotions,
right.
they're just confused. Yeah, right. Men need to pay a little bit closer attention. Okay? Any question or thoughts though on this? Remember, the writers are mixing them up. They're getting mixed together, putting the two stories together. John 20, verse 2.
And so she ran and came to Simon Peter and to the other disciples whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him."
Good, excellent. What does this tell you? Who is it? Who is she?
I don't know, what does it say before that?
Doesn't matter. Who is the she?
Mary Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It says in the beginning.
Okay? And she goes back, and the disciples, some of the disciples that are, at least two of them that are there, are Peter and the one loved, which is, we're going to call him John. Okay? And she said all that she knew, which was the body's gone. We don't know where it is. Okay? And that's not exactly a joyful thing, but nonetheless, it's information that they needed.
But that is what the disciples would believe.
Yes! They go, oh, that is, yeah, this risen thing, I don't know, but they could certainly go, okay, here we go. So here we have Mary Magdalene, when she arrived in Bethany around 6:30 a.m., takes time to go back, found many of the disciples were gathered, of course. The women told what had happened and what had been said, and they were told to go to Galilee, and that they were to go to Galilee. The disciples dismissed the story as emotional nonsense. The women could not even agree with each other on the details of what had happened. Easy. People looking at the same incident have different ways of describing it, and they're not always the same. That's okay. But the men didn't believe for whatever reason. As the group broke up, Mary Magdalene made a special plea to Peter and John, to whom she was able to speak privately. "I don't understand what has happened," she said, "but I do know that the body is gone, and I don't know where it is. Please go back with me and find out what has happened." That makes sense. It's only that group that's getting this message, the ones out in Bethany. Okay, any question or thought? Matthew 28, 11 through 15.
When they were going, some of the guards went into the city and told the chief priests everything that had happened. After the priests had assembled with the elders, they devised a plan to give a large sum of money to the soldiers, telling them, "You must say his disciples came by the night and stole him away while we were asleep.
Go ahead.
If this comes to the governor's ears, we will satisfy him and keep out of trouble."
And finish it then.
Okay, and then, so they took the money and did as they were directed. And this story is still told among the Jews to this day.
Okay, now we have the soldiers waking up. The women are gone. They're rousing with the sun hitting them in the face. They get up, they go back and report it. Any question on thought on this? They're in trouble.
Oh, that'd be terrifying.
Oh yeah, they are in serious. They know they're dead. Now they're going to be paid money apparently by the priests. "We'll pay you money." What good is
Tell
it?
the story.
Yeah, the elders. Yeah, thanks. We like to have. Oh, but we'll also smooth it out with your boss,
So you don't get killed.
so you don't get killed and can actually use the money.
Yes, the money is to say that this is the story.
Right. This is correct. So here we go. Meanwhile, after the women had departed from the tomb, the guards regained consciousness. They found the stone door had been moved and that there was no body inside the tomb. They decided to report what they knew to their employers. So they went to the home of Caiaphas and told him that they had seen the body, sealed the stone door, and kept watch. That an angel had struck them down, and now the stone door was moved and the body gone. Right? Okay. Caiaphas assembled his advisors to discuss what to do. They decided that the best thing they could do was to maintain peace, and that allowing the true story of the guards to get out would cause confusion and arguments. So they paid each soldier a sizable amount of money to say that they had fallen asleep. The advisors also agreed to pay off Pilate when he heard the story, because the guard knew that the penalty for sleeping on the job was death, and no amount of money was of any use if Pilate had them killed. Does that now make sense to you? Okay, let's get back to our story. Luke 24:12. Luke 24:12.
I'm getting there.
I know, take time.
I think there's 11.
Okay,
I don't have a 12.
read it anyway. What does it start to say? Is there an asterisk there in your translation?
This is it.
It should say something about, but Peter got up.
I read 11, but these words seem to them an idle tale.
Good, what's next?
And then I go right to 13.
Okay, well, here's what 12 says. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looked in, he saw the linen wrappings only, and went away to his home, marveling at what had happened. So here it is, Peter is running all by himself, runs out to the tomb, looks in, sees the linen, and goes away. Right?
Well, marveling at what happened, what is he thinking, that he's risen? Or
Yeah, that's what this is written years later.
Because the linen's still there.
Correct.
They rewrapped him. Or
The body poofed, and he's gone. Because a tomb raider, a tomb thief, would take the linens. That's part of why they went into a tomb to rob it, to get the linens, which they could then market after they washed it. So, I mean, these are desperate people in poverty. So he's marveling at what had happened. This is 30 years later, looking back, he marveled at the risen Christ. Okay, let's go on. John 23 through 10, I'll take care of that. So Peter and the other disciples went forth, and they were going to the tomb. Peter and John. The two were running together, and the other disciple ran ahead faster than Peter and came to the tomb first, and stooping looked in. He saw the linen wrapping lying there, but he did not go in. Go John. And so Simon Peter also came, following him, and entered the tomb and saw the linen wrapping lying there, and the face cloth which had been on his head, Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. So the other disciple, who had first come to the tomb, then also entered, and he saw and believed. That's John, and believed in the resurrection. For as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise again from the dead. So the disciples went away again to their own homes. Okay? You with me? Any question on this so far? Yes?
Well, I can't picture in my mind what they mean by, are making a deal about the face cloth
Okay.
someplace else.
It's being rolled up and set by itself. As the rest of the body disappeared, then the face cloth gets rolled up. I don't understand it either.
Well, if you were laying there prepped for burial,
Yeah?
and then you were going to get up and go somewhere, you'd have to take the thing off your head so you could see where you were going.
In theory, yes, unless the body simply dematerialized. And the linens just dropped.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the head piece is different, and I don't know what that is. Okay? Around 6:45 a.m., Peter, John, and Mary Magdalene set off from Bethany to return to the tomb. They had to be careful. If they were recognized, the religious leaders might have them arrested. So they traveled to Bethphage, up on the Mount of Olives, then down to the city, through the gate, always keeping their faces down. And we're going to pause here and pick it up next time.
Yes.